Hi, I'm John Pullman, professional boxing trainer, owner of Pullman's Gym in Northridge, California, and this is Pullmanomics. You developed your own method of doing things.
Yeah, you felt that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You do your sit-ups, then we come in and we shadow box 4 rounds. Right there. You learn too, and you become a family. I think it's important.
Well, what a treat we have today. A good friend of mine, doesn't really need much introduction. Mr. Abel Sanchez, trained so many world champions, a legend in boxing. We're grateful to have him today, and we're going to sit down with him and you know, get his thoughts and just his perspective on life and on boxing and whatever he's willing to share with us today. So, Mr. Sanchez, thank you for having us here in your beautiful facility.
I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, and thank you for sitting down and doing this. It really means a lot, and especially on what's happening in your life and everything. Like, what a great time for us to be here with you. So this is it, huh? You know, in this gym.
I've sold the gym, so I'm retiring. I think I've had enough of staying away from my family. It really is the most important part. It's almost 43 years of this, so that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think a lot of people, you know, feel it's hard to understand is this is your whole life when you're doing it. You say staying away from your family, like literally staying away from your family. Yeah. Like, give me that little rundown of your schedule. Like, in the morning, what times to start?
You as a coach would understand what it's like to devote time. Usually, say during the week, Monday through Saturday, we get here at 5:30 in the morning, get prepared for the run.
Right.
I follow my guys on the run, which could be anywhere from 3 to 6 miles. We come back, we do our exercises, so maybe we're finished by 8:30. Go home, have breakfast, come back at 11 for the first group, 11 to 1, and the second group from 1 to 3, third group from 3 to 5.
Right, and then your wife sees you when you're tired.
When I'm finished.
Right. So
when I'm exhausted, yes.
Exactly. So no, that makes sense, and you know, you've done this for a long time, and I mean, just to kind of like get a little bit of you know, background and stuff. What really got you involved in training fighters?
I actually started. One of my employees and I, when I started my construction company, first of all, when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
And one of my employees and I decided we were going to do Taekwondo classes. In them days, in 74, 75, Taekwondo was the hot thing to do.
Right.
So we...
But where did that come from? Did you guys do martial arts together, or
no,
just...
it's the male part, I guess. You just wanted to get involved. Wanted to hit something.
Got it.
So we enrolled in a 3-month class over in Rolling Heights.
Okay.
And while we're there, the kickboxing craze was going on back then. So I decided I wanted to kickbox after about a couple weeks at this Taekwondo gym, and I found out about a gym in Pasadena, Ed Parker's gym, from somebody there at this club, at this dojo. And I went to this gym on Lake Street in Pasadena, and started training there to kickbox. Is what was my intent. They were teaching us how to box a little bit and teaching us how to kick. The kickboxing back then was you had to kick 8 times above the knee, above the knee, somewhere around the thigh, and then after that you could use your hands. As long as you got your 8 kicks in per round.
Okay.
So while I was there, within a week, I met this guy that was going to a boxing gym to train. 3 days a week he would train in a boxing gym. 2 days a week he would train in Ed Parker's gym. I met him and he told me about this gym. It was Ben Lira's gym in El Monte.
Yeah.
This is back in 1970,
yes.
75, 76, somewhere in there. So I went to the gym to find out what it was all about. He had just opened it. I trained there for maybe 2.5 years, 3 years. And then while I was doing that, I kickboxed some amateur fights for, believe it or not, what's his name? Dan Rodarte.
Okay.
His son, Steve Rodarte, owns Elite Boxing over in Santa Fe Springs.
Yes, I know him as well.
And Dan was the promoter in Whittier. So we fought many times for him, did very well. And then I started boxing amateur for Ben. But the training in the boxing part took away from my business. And at the time, in 79, 80, I was starting to frame and to do concrete on the houses where the movie E.T. was filmed.
And how old are you around this time? Early 20s?
24, maybe 23.
Got it.
And actually 22, 23.
Okay.
And I had to concentrate more on my business, so I got away from the actual fighting of it and training for a fight and started helping Ben in the gym. This was in 78, 79. And I was building these houses at the same time. So in about 81, 82, I decided and I was helping him with the fighters too. I was helping him in the corner, and Lupe Aquino was an amateur, or I should say a young pro in the gym. And that was one of my sparring partners, and I don't know if you remember a guy named, oh gosh, I forgot, he fought Robert Duran, but he was one of the fighters in there also. But so my business started to kind of suffer because I was spending so much time. So I actually completely retired from that, probably in 81.
No boxing.
No boxing. Just went back to business and started doing the construction. And in 86, in early 86, I called Lupe's dad, Lupe Aquino's dad, who they lived in Santa Paula, who was a friend of mine, and asked just to see how they were. I hadn't talked to him, and I asked about Lupe, and he said he had retired. Because I guess Ben had sold his contract to somebody else in San Diego, and he was training in San Diego, and he couldn't get along with the people out there, so he moved back home. He retired at 22 years old, 23 years old. And I said, wow, I couldn't believe that. So he wasn't home. I called, I told his father that I would call him later on in the evening. I called him in the evening, and he told me the stories his side of the story of what happened in San Diego. And I asked him if he still wanted to fight. He said yes. So I promised him I could get him fights. If he came down to West Covina where I lived, I'd get him a house, I'd get him an apartment, and I'd get him a bike. I couldn't get him a car because I know he was crazy. He'd be driving everywhere. So anyway, I got him a bike. We came down to West Covina. We started training. We're training at the Baldwin Park Recreation Center there with Mike Salas. We trained for about 3 months, and finally I was able to get him a fight with Top Rank. We fought in October, and he knocked some guy out. And then we fought in November, and he knocked out, at the time, Dio Colome, who was a rising star with Jimmy Montoya. It was Knockout of the Year on ESPN.
So he wasn't supposed to win that fight?
No, he wasn't supposed to win that fight. So then we fought again in February, but in December, I got to meet Marty Denkin, who was the commissioner back then. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
He was my neighbor in West Covina, and I remember being invited to a show in December of that 86, and Marty comes up to me behind me and wraps his arm around me and says, "Listen, kid, I want you to meet somebody here. I want you to talk to this guy." And it was Lupe's manager from San Diego. We were fighting, and the commission was taking the part of the manager out of his purse and giving it to the manager. But the manager wanted to be his manager. He wanted to be involved. So I go over to the dressing room. Terry Norris was fighting that night.
Oh, okay.
And I go over to his dressing room, meet Terry, and I meet Orlin. And the manager, Joe, says to me, "I'd like to sit down with you and discuss, what the future is with this young man, with Lupe. Maybe we can meet after the holidays." So I drove down to San Diego sometime in January, and we sat down, and I told him what Lupe wanted, what I wanted as part, and he agreed to everything that Lupe was demanding. He says to me, the line was, "If you're the young man that can coach this kid, then you're the one that needs to be working with him." So Bob had already promised a title fight if we can get this resolved. So we had another fight in February, got another knockout, and then we were promised a fight Dwayne Thomas, Emmanuel Stewart's Dwayne Thomas, on the Hagler-Leonard card, which is April 6th of 87. Unfortunately, Dwayne got hurt, so we ended up fighting the first fight on HBO, which was a 6 o'clock fight against a guy named Davey Moore.
Trained by Abel Sanchez.
We stopped him, I think, in the 8th round or 9th round. That's when Leonard beat Hagler that night. We ended up fighting Dwayne Thomas in July 12th in Bordeaux, France, and beat him for the title. That was the first belt. First fighter I trained by myself with the first belt. We come back 2 or 3 weeks later. I get summoned or called to go to the office in San Diego. I lived in Riverside at the time. To go to the office in San Diego, where Joe's office was, to not only get my check for the fight, but also to discuss the future. And after we did all that, he said, "The boys would like to talk to you." As I walked into the office, I noticed that Terry and Orlin were sitting to one side. And he said, "The boys would like to talk to you." So they come to the back, and Terry, being the more boisterous one of the two, said to me, we'd like to know if you'd like to train us. So Terry Norris was my second fighter, my second champion. Orlin Norris was my third fighter, my third champion.
Yeah, wow.
Right out of the gate.
Oh, wow.
So then I moved down to San Diego and we started training fighters out of that gym, and we made another one out of the San Diego gym. Paul Vaden was one of our fighters. So there was success early in that. That's probably the worst thing, because then you're stuck. You think this will continue, and you keep searching for that one. I've been fortunate; I've had 20 of them.
Yeah, well, that's very fortunate.
Yeah, it's very.
But it's also you have one up here that says, "quote on your wall of quote on your wall of quotes." It says, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." Yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot of that involved in there too. Obviously,
it is. Whenever you're successful at anything, your friends and people around you are going to say, wow, how lucky you are to be traveling. No, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. If you want to be successful, it's a lot of work. But in anything, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think the hard work, is a given. I mean, there are some things, right, that are out of our control. Or one trainer put it to me like, you can't win the Kentucky Derby on a farm horse, right? No matter how hard you work or how good a trainer you are, if the fighter doesn't have something special inside of them as well, you could maybe elaborate on your thoughts on that as well.
My father used to tell us, you're not going to get hit by a car unless you're in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you're not in the gym,
right,
that guy's not going to walk through the door.
Right.
There's another Floyd out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be lucky enough to get him. There's another Gennady Golovkin. There's another Joshua. There's another Fury. He's out there somewhere. But if you're not lucky enough to be in the gym, to maybe be the one that he walks in to meet, the first guy he meets when he walks at the door.
This is interesting too, because let me ask you what your thoughts are on this, where different trainers have different perspectives about this, but you're talking about a trainer being fortunate to cross paths with a special athlete, right? Do you believe that athlete will be a great champion with or without meeting the right trainer? Regardless of whoever they train with, do you think that they're just that special? Some guys are just that special and they're going to be a champion, or do you think they have to cross paths with the right individual as well?
There are some athletes out there that Ray Charles could train. Seriously, I mean, we can pat ourselves on the back all we want, but if we, like you said, we don't have a thoroughbred, it's going to be difficult. All of us coaches have gifts. Mm-hmm. All of us coaches have ideas. All of us coaches have methods of training. If you're lucky enough to find that fighter that has a little bit of talent or some talent, mm-hmm. and is able to mix or match your thoughts and want to develop in your way, then you're fortunate. But first is finding that one that has the talent that you can mix with yours that'll make him. Listen, when Golovkin first came here, I remember riding on that dry race board over there. I asked him to give me 3 years of non-interrupted training. Let me do what I think I need to do, and let me train you the way that I think I need to train you. And to his credit, you're talking about a guy with 350 amateur fights and 5 losses, amateur world champion, rated number 2 or 3 in the world at the time that I started working with him. For the 9.5 years, I never heard a peep out of him.
Yeah.
You know, so those athletes are out there. You just have to be.
But me knowing you, I also know that the type of ship you run, the way your personality is. I remember the first time you come to my gym, you brought Murat to the gym to spar with Gerald, and you said I asked something about Murat, but you made it very clear. I'm the trainer. He's a fighter. He's going to do whatever.
How many rounds?
Yeah, there you go. He's going to do however many I say he's going to do. That's how many he's going to do.
His saying is, Coach, you tell me when I die.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. So it's I already know what type of guy you are and what type of ship you run and so on and so on. So Golovkin always seems like you guys, just watching you guys around each other and even in the fights, it always seemed like a match made in heaven. Like what you talked about. His attributes lined up with your attributes, and that's why you guys went on this great run together.
But the thing is, though, if they allow them, if they give themselves to you 100%, then it's easy for you. It's easier. Right. It's easier for a coach, I should say.
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of coaches that unfortunately are not forceful enough sometimes, and the fighter will go home and the parent will say, well, you should be doing this, and because I saw it on YouTube, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. So the fighter goes back to the gym. Now he's got a little second thoughts in the back of his mind that this coach is not the right coach for him.
Yeah.
And you never know. I mean, you have to. It's like a marriage. You have to be married to somebody for a while before you really get to know them.
Right.
You know, and the same thing with a fighter and a coach.
I think it was Al Gavin said one time, it takes 5 years just to get to know a guy.
Absolutely.
You know, before you know how he thinks, what makes him. You know, there's certain guys that I train since they were little kids. I could tell by the way, the look on his face, what he's thinking. You know.
Yeah. What happened at home?
Yeah. Exactly. Or your girlfriend or whatever it is.
Exactly,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
But in order for that to happen, in order for that blend to happen, I think it's, as a coach, we're willing to give ourselves to them.
Right.
The fighter has to give himself to us and allow us to be right and not to question, because it's not about today, it's not about 6 months from now, it's about 2 or 3 or 4 years from now.
Absolutely.
What's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if they allow themselves, and then it's a match made in heaven, but it took a lot of work to make it a match made in heaven.
But I would imagine, trying to think from their perspective as well, it's got to be like a little bit, I mean, they have to trust at a certain point, because it's got to be a little scary, especially in this, right? You don't play boxing, right? This is very dangerous. People die in boxing all the time, but more than they should. And so for them to just hand themselves over to a trainer, that's got to be like a scary thing for a fighter too. Is there like, talk to me about that process. It is like a black and white issue, like they walk in the gym and is my way or the highway, or is it because it seems like you let them know and then that's it. Like, that's what I would think, just talking to you. Or is there like a process where you kind of gotta you sell yourself to the fighter?
It depends on what level the fighter is.
Right.
If it's a young amateur, which I don't work with the young amateurs, it's easy to just tell them this is the way it's going to be, and if you like it, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. When it's more of a seasoned pro, like, okay, when I got Golovkin, he had some fights. When I got Arsen, he had some fights. When I got Murat, he had some fights. So you have to show them that you are the one.
Right.
Yeah, your deeds have to speak for themselves, but you also have to keep it fresh. You as a coach, for Golovkin, and for most of my fighters, and the fighters really never know that you're doing this, or they shouldn't know that you're doing this. But for every fight that we had, let's say you're my fighter and we're fighting next month, I'm gonna implement something different in what we're doing than the last fight.
Right.
So every fight I want to do something different to try to. We already can do a lot of things. Now let's try a different thing, improve on that particular thing. The next fight we're going to work on another thing, and the next fight. So after 10 fights, you've worked on 10 different things. So you kept it fresh, but still kept it consistent with the kind of work that you do. So I think a lot of coaches, unfortunately, a lot of coaches are not paying attention to how they can improve themselves. Right. If you don't improve yourself as a coach, then the fighter's going to see that. Yeah. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm getting tired of this. Yeah. So you as a coach have to make sure that you keep it. My father used to have this famous saying, maybe it doesn't apply, but dazzle him with brilliance and baffle him with bullshit. You have to keep not regurgitating everything, not doing the same thing over, but not eating the same meal all the time. Just, okay, for instance, your favorite combination is a jab, right hand, and a hook. Okay, that's your favorite combination. So, okay, so this time I want to throw an uppercut before that combination. Okay, just a simple example. Okay, I'm gonna throw the same combination, but I've watched your tapes now. He's watched your tapes for a while, and he knows that your favorite combination, you throw with a jab, and you're gonna come back with right hand and hook. Okay, well this time we're gonna throw a little short uppercut, even if it's not at your guy, and then throw the combination again. So now you just changed something. Yeah. So now that just made it a little bit different. Right. So those are the little things that even if they don't make sense to anybody else, it doesn't matter. Your fighter is seeing something different from you, and it's not the same guy showing up every day. Yeah, I always like a good analogy I like is like a toolbox, right? You keep putting, like, for you to say, another tool to it.
You got a wrench.
Right, before you know it, just a full toolbox.
Yeah, you go to the job, you could do anything.
Yeah, and if it's 10 fights, you've done 10 different things. Right. And I think the fighters appreciate that. Yeah. On our runs, we have, here in this gym, we had like 5 or 6 different runs. In the morning when they get up, my fighters never know what they're going to do today. in this tomorrow morning
Yeah.
when they get to the gym, they have no idea what they're going to do
spar. They don't.
They
know.
have no idea.
See, I like that because
no idea.
I have some. There's again, one of the things I respect about you, like the old school mentality, is you know you always have the fighter saying, "What am I going to do tomorrow?" You're gonna spar. Who am I gonna spar?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Who are you gonna spar?
Yeah.
If I would ask my trainer who I was gonna spar, it's like funny.
You know, I don't want my fighter to plan his day tomorrow.
Right.
I'm planning your day.
Yeah, and training camp is. Yeah.
I'm planning your
Gotcha.
day. I'm planning your day because you don't like to do this. My father used to. You don't like to eat spinach. You're gonna eat more spinach.
Right.
You don't like to run. We're gonna run more.
Yeah.
You know,
it's good for them.
Yeah, or you're gonna spar more. You're gonna hit the mitts more. You're gonna hit the bag more.
Yeah.
But again, that's if they give themselves to you, then it's easy to do that.
Right.
You know, when you have a guy fighting you, like the guy you're talking about, or that particular fighter says, why do I have to do that tomorrow? Why are you here? Stay home.
Yeah. Especially boxing. I mean.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time in there where you're going to need having that toughness not given, just doing whatever you need to do
and
mentality.
You have to prove it to them in there when you're working with them and when they're doing something, and make sure you acknowledge when they're doing something correct, because one of these days you're going to get in a corner and it's going to be a difficult fight. They're going to look at you in the eye and they have to believe you.
Yeah.
They have to believe you. If they don't believe you, then they're in there by themselves.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because you have got people yelling from the ring or saying all these random things, but a fighter knows, like, when they're really in trouble, if someone can help them or not.
Right. Well, that's why that sign is there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. People have a lot to say about lives they never lived.
You know, everybody from the side knows everything.
Yeah.
But they haven't been in here. It's like an announcer, a perfect example. Sometimes an announcer will say, well, he needs to do this and he needs to do that, and the coach needs to tell him, what if he didn't work that in the gym? What if that wasn't worked? Then it's confusing. If I'm going to re-coach you in the corner.
There's definitely certain things like that you can fix on the fly in a fight, and there's certain things that have to be fixed in the gym.
And you have to stay away from them.
Exactly.
Because that's a negative that the fighter is going to create this negative thought in his head that he can't do this. So you have to keep it positive in the corner. I try to keep it positive in the corner. I never say anything negative in the corner. But most important is that I don't want to work on something that I haven't worked on in the gym.
Right.
I don't want to tell you to do something that, wait a minute, coach, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless of course it's Golovkin or Floyd Mayweather or somebody at the level where
they're capable of doing it.
They've done everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you started to touch on it a little bit, but so Golovkin, how did you start training him? When did you meet him?
I actually in 2000 about 2000 I retired again from boxing. It just my business just was not doing well. Oh, I shouldn't say my business. It just got to the point where the fighters just weren't doing what I didn't have a gym, so I was driving I had Francois Bota back then, Miguel Angel Gonzalez, and I was driving to the training, and that to me has always been not a good thing for me. I like to have a place, a home.
Right. Absolutely.
So I got out of it, and in 2006. My son and I bought this place, the lots for this place in '99 and 2000. I built the building and finished it in 2001 for Emmanuel. It was actually designed for Emmanuel Stewart.
Yes.
And Emmanuel was training Oscar back then in 2000. And but Emmanuel's schedule was impossible. He needed a helicopter on a 24/7 just to take him up and down because he was everywhere. You know, he just couldn't stay. So there was no way he was going to be able to train up here. We opened up Kronk West, Big Bear, not too far from here.
Yeah.
He did. And but it was, like I said, it was just impossible for him to be up here. So when I built it, he never used it. So I just left it for my children to use as a resort house, the ski resort being a quarter mile away. And this building had lights, gas, water, everything, cable for 6 years. And I don't think my kids used it more than twice a year.
Right. So you didn't have the gym in it at the time?
No, it was just I used the bottom floor, the garage, for storage for my construction company.
And then you just had the bedrooms?
Yeah, and the houses were set up. Everything was all furnished, everything. And this down here was all my lumber and my tools and everything, the garages. So in late 2006, my son and I decided we're going to build a gym for my friends to use. Well, my son was living with me at the time, working with me. So I conned him into helping me build the gym so that my friends, I was going to loan it to you, loan it to my friends, a Big Bear gym. And by 2008, let's just say late 2008, I finished it. Oscar used it for the first time. And once Oscar used it for 24/7, everybody knew. Actually, Jose Navarro used it the first time, but it wasn't completely finished.
Right.
Oscar used it when it was finished.
Did they just like come into Big Bear to train?
They used the houses, actually. They lived in the houses,
everything.
and they used the gym. And once he left, 24/7 now made it clear that there was a gym up here. So I started getting a lot of calls, and then I started getting fighters. I got Baldomir, I got several, Luis Abregu from Argentina. So I started getting fighters that I really didn't want to get back into it. But having the gym kind of forces you to be back into it. So in about April of 2010, I get a call from a guy named Max. I forget his last name. Two brothers, the managers for Golovkin.
Okay.
They wanted to meet me. Golovkin wanted to meet me. He told me his name. He said, "I have a fighter that I'm bringing from Europe, and he wants to meet you. Wants to see your gym." He tells me his name. I had no clue. I wasn't following.
Right. Especially that name, you're not gonna know.
So this was on a Friday. He called me. Saturday they come up about 1 o'clock, and Golovkin, Max, and what's the other man's name? They come up, and Oleg was the last. Max and Oleg were brothers, and they come up and we meet. They see the gym. They see outside. They drive up, or they just raving about the drive up in the trees. Just
it's beautiful.
Like she was right now.
It is a beautiful drive.
And the manager, after 30, 40 minutes, the managers decided they were going to go into town and look around. And Golovkin stayed here with me, and he had some videos, some DVDs. We put them on the DVD
of him
player.
fighting?
Of his fights, of his previous fights. We put them on
professional fights?
Professional fights, yeah.
How many professional fights did you have at the time?
I want to say 16, 17, somewhere in there.
All over there?
All over there, yeah. All in Europe. And he brought some amateur tapes also. So we watched them in boxing talk, because he spoke very little English and I didn't speak no Russian. In boxing talk, he's telling me what he's doing, and I'm telling him what he should do and what he could do and what he should have done, and this would have worked better. Kind of just rehashing it. So the managers come back. There's 3 hours maybe in this. The managers come back, and we go have dinner. We agreed to have breakfast Sunday morning. So when I went home, they give me all this information when I were having dinner. I go home and start looking at the computer and go, damn. Who was just in my gym? This is a god from over there in Europe. 350 amateur fights, five losses. He knocked out Boutte in this amateur tape that he showed me, and wow, this guy's pretty good. Right. So obviously the next day I had a little different perspective on the whole thing.
It's probably better though in hindsight.
I didn't know him.
Because you're right. This guy's talking to me, and you're getting the real. You know what I mean?
They're getting me as not as a
trying to sell yourself or anything.
Right. So next morning we have breakfast, and they leave, and he says, the manager says to me, "We'll see you in a couple months." And I thought to myself, yeah, sure. We'll see, and the check's in the mail too.
Right.
So when he leaves, let's just say I went to your gym next week, and I'm telling you, man, I just had this guy in my gym. You're not going to be, I'm bragging to you about this guy that was in my gym. 3 or 4 people I did that to. So in a couple months, I get a call. I get a call from Max. And he's talking to me, and I'm thinking it's you BSing me. You're pranking me, right? One of my friends is pranking me. So, because when I had him here, I told you, when I talked to you, I told you that, man, if I had him, I could do this, and I could, just that. So, it wasn't a prank. It was the manager saying, this was on a Saturday, saying, listen, Golovkin Gennady is his name. Gennady's coming in tomorrow, and this Russian flight number this, and he's coming in at 2 o'clock, and would you pick him up? Okay. Went to LAX, picked him up, and he comes with a little off the plane with a little bag like this, and I said to him, let's go get your luggage. And he says, no, coach, I don't have no luggage. This is my luggage. I came to train. I didn't come to nothing else but to train. 4 months later, we fought in Panama for the title. He won the title. And then we made 20 defenses, 23 knockouts in a row. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching it.
Or 23 defenses and 20 knockouts, something like that. It's a record that he holds. I think he tied Bernard Hopkins for the most defenses in the middleweight division or something like that.
So many. I'm sure so many memorable moments for you throughout that too.
Yeah, as you know, as a coach, when you're with somebody for a while and you're with them for so much time of your life,
right?
They become like your family. They become your children. They, their successes are your successes.
And you just know, especially being a boxing trainer, it's hard to explain to people who obviously aren't boxing trainers. It's like these fighters on a different level than just being their friend. Like you know them at their most vulnerable situations. You know, like what hurts them, what makes them happy, their strengths, their weaknesses.
What not to say, what to say.
Yeah, how to try to get them to help them overcome these dark places. And it's like it's a relationship that's not really, I don't know a parallel relationship exactly, because it's not quite like a parent. It's different. It's just a.
But your psychologist, your doctor,
all these things.
Your coach, your mother, your father, your advisor,
right.
But credit to him, and credit to a lot of the fighters that commit themselves. This was 2010, late in the year, so 2011, 2012, 2013, he spent 10 months out of those years with me.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what it takes.
And he
right?
had a wife and a young child in Stuttgart.
Yeah.
That he saw between those dates.
Right.
So,
that's tough. Yeah.
No, it's extremely tough. It's a very lonely sport. But,
right.
We get to go home.
Yeah.
We get to go home to our loved ones.
He gets to go upstairs.
Yeah, he gets to go upstairs and sleep by himself. Yeah, they have computers. They can talk to their family.
Right.
But it's different.
Yeah, fighters definitely make the most sacrifice for sure. That's why they get. It's like I always tell these guys when they come into my gym. I'm sure, obviously, you're even more so. But if a fighter comes in and I explain to them, look, you become a world champion someday and make a whole lot of money. Your life's going to change. My life's not going to change. I'm still going to the gym tomorrow. Right. I still have the same. I have a nice house. I have a beautiful family, beautiful lady. I drive a cool car. Like I don't. Your money or whatever is not going to change. Right. Your life is really going to change, right. And so you're the one that's going to have to deal with the most shit and make the most sacrifice, if you will. And I'm sure you're on a different level because you're doing really well for yourself outside of boxing. Right. Thank God.
Well, it is difficult for them. A lot of them can't handle it.
Yeah.
A lot of them can't handle all of a sudden having all this in your hands, and that is probably where you are probably most important. Secondly, most important in the fight than the training is that because that can ruin them.
Right. Just how to handle
Just
everything.
How to handle it.
Yeah.
Taxes. All of a sudden, they got more money than they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they got more friends than they've ever had. They got more relatives than they've ever had.
Right.
So you become important. Some of them, unfortunately, the guys that I get at a point. I don't really like to start with guys at the beginning or amateurs and like that. I've turned pro a lot of guys that have done very well, but most of the guys that come to me have a background with some people that have backgrounds. So hopefully their monies will be spent the correct way.
Got it.
And hopefully their monies will be invested the correct way.
Yeah.
So that way they can concentrate on what they're doing here and not have to worry about anything on the outside. Right. But unfortunately in this business, many of them they had riches and now they're broke.
Yeah. I mean, it's all too common.
Yeah.
In a lot of sports, not just boxing.
And a lot of times we get blamed because we have money, but they got to understand we had money before we started. We wouldn't be in the gym if we didn't have.
Yeah, if you weren't able to, you wouldn't have your own gym if you weren't able to make certain decisions
Correct.
and make certain moves in life outside of that.
And that's why I've always believed that a coach has got to have a home. A coach has got to have a place. The things that I do here, you don't do in your gym. The equipment that I have here, you don't have, because it's not something that's for sale. I make my own equipment.
Yeah,
I have my own methods. So when you're in your own gym, you can do those things.
Right.
You go to a public gym and you have these old timers, not boxing guys, but old timers that go to the gym. That's all they have to do, but just watch guys train.
Right.
Old timers. They say, "Well, Joe Louis never did that." They start commenting on what other. And a lot of coaches, unfortunately, don't have thick skin enough to continue doing their method, and they listen to what other people say.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people are not successful. Listen, we're going to live and die by whatever it is that we do. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose my way.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
If I'm going to win, I'm going to win my way. I'm not going to allow anybody to influence me, because at the end of the day, they can blame it on me anyway.
Right. So might as well
it be my way.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I like what you said when you tell me guys would call you to, to possibly want you to train them, and you say, look, if you want me to train you, right, you come by yourself, or with your dad and a cook, and that's
chef,
it.
Yeah.
I don't want all those other people in the gym.
It's because you get, say you get a big name that wants to come to your gym, and the big name is accustomed, just like Chavez was senior, and just like a lot of the big names are, they're accustomed to traveling with 3 or 4 guys.
Right.
And those 3 or 4 guys are the ones that pat you on the back, and the guys that wipe your brow and stuff. And I would hate to get a big name to come in that wants me to train him, and come in and one of those guys say to me, well, he really doesn't like to run at that time. I say, I don't care what he likes to do. When at the end of the day, when he loses, they're not going to blame that guy. They're going to blame me.
Yeah.
So I've had to, unfortunately, turn a lot of big names down because of that.
Yeah.
And that hurts the pocketbook.
Yeah.
But
that also helps because you were successful and you're not hurting. For that.
Well, but it hurts the pocketbook, and it also hurts the legacy, because you can say you work with so and so,
right? Yeah.
But if he doesn't look good, then you don't look good. And
I also look at it too, like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Like, if it doesn't feel right for you,
right.
If it's not the right situation, then a lot of times you'll save yourself a lot of grief by walking away, even if it seems really good.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So sometimes we'll get into a situation that we knew ahead of time shouldn't have.
Yeah, and we did it anyway.
And then all of a sudden it's like, doggone it, why? And then and it's not always the fighter, though.
No.
It's not always the fighter that's doggone it, I shouldn't have done this. It's the people around him.
Right.
And then you get so close to the fighter, and if you become one. Right. And it's difficult to say, I don't want to work with you no more.
Yeah, and there's just certain things you could have said or nipped in the butt earlier that you did, but you learn those lessons because you've been doing this so long. So that's really I know I learned some of those lessons the hard way myself.
There's a lot of big names that I've asked to leave through that door.
Yeah.
See ya.
Well, good for you. I respect that, though. I really respect that about you, that you stand on what you believe in, and no matter what, if it ain't right, like if it ain't principally sound for your principles and how you feel about it, then you're not going to do it. Like, I mean, even the whole situation that happened with like Golovkin, I don't know all the ins and outs and the reasoning behind it, but I remember seeing kind of from the outside looking in. I could tell you, stop me if I'm wrong, or correct me if you feel I'm saying anything that's not correct. But I remember watching that whole thing transpire. When Golovkin signed like that big deal with,
well, it wasn't only the big deal. What happens is unfortunately, a lot of fighters, when they start getting success. Yeah. Okay, when you're with somebody from the beginning, and I'm sure it happened with some of the guys that you had success with. Of course. I'm sure you can relate to this. All of a sudden, you start getting people, and when you were a fighter back 20 years ago or 25 years ago, there was a word that was used in the gyms because internet wasn't there, because a lot of the media wasn't there. It was called buzzing. Remember buzzing when you buzz a fighter? Yeah. Okay, well, what happens now is that when you're successful with a fighter, guys come in and start talking to that fighter and start saying what things that they could do for them that this particular person's not doing, and that particular. And when you get to that point, and somebody will say, well, I can do it for half. Yeah. And I can do it for a third. And all of a sudden, the fighter, the fighter or the family of the fighter has a lot to do with it too, because they're putting their future on the line too, because they're depending on this man to do something successful. So when you all of a sudden you go home as a fighter, you go home and listen to your wife and listen, I can get somebody to do it for, we don't have to pay this and we don't have to pay that. Then it's a no-brainer, really, when you think about, well, the future, let me see, when our kids get older, what are we going to do? All fighters go through that. Yeah. It's the fighters that have that loyalty. That Marvin Hagler was a perfect example. Yeah. I don't know if you know the story of Marvin Hagler when he was going to fight Ray Leonard, and they were trying to make the fight, or he was fighting for a title. And I remember hearing the story on the internet, or I think Bob was saying it. Marvin, they're sitting around the table, and the Petronellis are sitting, and Marvin says they're trying to negotiate the fight, and the Petronelli said, "Well, we can cut our percentage," or something like this. And Marvin slams his head down on the table and says, "You will never work with me again if you ever cut your percentage," or something like that. Yeah. No, man, we got here together. Right. We got, and I think that loyalty is missing today in a lot of situations. Yeah. Unfortunately, but if you put yourself in their shoes, there's some things that are correct about it, but there's some things that are very incorrect about it.
Well, I think I mean, it's a very, especially you having been the one that kind of dealt with that, right? That's very like enlightened of you to even see it from his perspective at all, right? Because it's kind of frustrating where you're working with a guy when he first comes to America and you take him on, you guys mesh so good together and you teach and spend so much time with him and help him so much and have so much success, and then and I'm not, again, I never count another man's pockets, but you know, I don't know how much money he's making alone. I'm sure he had some pretty decent paydays, but when he really, really got paid, it's like.
But that's how it happens, though.
I know, but it's like
not when they're making it. It's not when they're not making any money.
I know, they don't want to give you your percentage, right?
Yeah, it's when they're making money that they want to.
But it's like odd to me because, and that's not odd. It's just you're not. So it's okay for me to work for nothing, not nothing, but it's okay for me to. But the minute you really get paid, now all that equity is like
somebody else, but
it's gone.
Like I said, sometimes it's advisors that come into play.
No, of course, yeah, like what you said.
It's guys that know more than you did, but weren't there when we were struggling, you know?
No, but like I say, I always respected the way you handled it because, okay.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It was very painful at the beginning.
Of course it's painful, but
originally, but then you realize that, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah,
and nothing I can do about it.
No, and you're not going to miss a meal.
And that's the problem in the U.S. with coaches. Joe Goosen's been a proponent of this with the commission for 25 years that I can remember. You realize that we as coaches have everything to do with winning and losing. Are the only ones that have anything to do with winning and losing a fight or a fighter losing, and we are the only ones that are not protected by a contract.
Right. Yeah. No, that's super interesting.
The managers
put it that way, right?
The manager's protected by a contract.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He sets up the fights. He doesn't come to the gym and make sure he's training, make sure he's running, make sure. But yet he's telling you, no, can he lose another 10 pounds?
Right.
You know, you're the one that's struggling with him.
Right.
The sponsor has a contract with the fighter. Mm-hmm. The promoter has a contract with the fighter.
Yeah.
But yet you as a coach don't have a contract with the fighter.
Yeah.
Why is that? Joe Goosen's been fighting that forever.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, when you put it that way, like it just seemed pretty weird. My outtake or outlook on it is always, I always tell these guys, look, if you don't want to be here, I don't want you to be here. You know, because I'm like you, whereas, you know what, if you don't want to be fair and reasonable, like with me, then just go somewhere else.
Yeah,
like, I don't need it like that, you know.
It's not worth a heart attack.
It's very powerful, though. That's a powerful, outlook, you know.
Yeah, but remember that you're in a different position. You may be in a different position that a lot of other young coaches are.
Yeah.
That depend on this, on these measly $300 they're going to get for a $3,000 fight.
Yeah.
You know, or $1,000 for. But yet people don't realize, oh, you got $1,000 for that fight? Yeah, but I'd worked 3 months for that.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah, and I spent my own gas, I spent my own Vaseline, my own tape, my own gauze, you know, and you never get that back. But you don't do it because you're going to get $1,000. You do it because you really, truly love the game and want to teach.
Yes.
But it's got to be fair when it gets to the point where if we don't make any money, that's okay.
Right.
It's an investment for me.
Right.
You know? But if we make money, then let's all.
Well, it's like, okay, here, I make $100,000, here's 10%.
Right.
I make $1 million, here's 10%. I make $10 million, here's 10%. Okay, I made $50 million. You can't get 10%.
It's relative because I'll tell you a story. Emanuel Stewart told me one time, or I heard from somebody telling me Emanuel Stewart said he had this young man working in the gym, helping him. When he first started in the mid-70s. And this young man was cleaning the gym, was not a fighter, but cleaning the gym and being around and being, you know, just helping. And he helped so much that got to the point where Emmanuel was starting to be successful. He had a first champion was Hilmer Kenty. And the story goes that Emmanuel said to this young man, he says, if I ever make any money, I'm going to give you 10%. If I ever make any money, I'm going to give 10%. So years go by, 10 years go by, and he's Tommy Hearns, Jimmy Paul, and, you know, so many world champions that he had. I guess he paid this man $1 million or something like that. Some reporter gets a hold of it, or somebody gets a hold of it, and says, how is that possible that you can pay this guy who's got he's not a boxer, not anything like that? Emanuel Stewart says, next year I want to pay him $10 million. The reporter looked at him like, are you stupid? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
says, it's relative, man. That just means I made 100 million.
Right, exactly.
You know, people don't look at it. The fighters don't look at it that way. The fighters don't look at it that like, if you make $1 million, if you paid me $1 million, you made 10.
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't pay it to me, guess who you're going to pay it to?
Right.
Uncle Sam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, and so if it's working, why change it? You know,
Yeah.
just continue doing what you're doing and be successful. And there comes a point where I do believe that there comes a point where sometimes a coaching change is required.
Yeah, I would say, especially from like a technical perspective, where things aren't working, like he's not looking good or he's not fighting good. I get all that, but when it's because of money or something like that, that's always like a little disheartening to me.
Now, if a fighter says, or in a meeting, the fighter says, "Listen, I'd like to bring in so and so because he's good at this and he's good at that, and you know, what can we work?" Then it's at least an opportunity for the coach, the young coach that doesn't know, who can learn from this bigger fella. As in Oscar's case, when Robert was his coach, they brought in Cholin from Mexico. They brought in several guys. Gil Clancy came in for a little while. So you come in, and we as young coaches, when we're young, or when we're not that experienced, I shouldn't say young, when we're not that experienced, we can learn from them if we're willing to.
Right.
Okay. But I think all those things need to be discussed instead of just bam, you're going to be fired. You know, that hurts.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of times when as fighters mature as well as human beings in general, a lot of times they could probably look back on things and wish they handled things differently as well. I'm sure
absolutely,
that
absolutely. I had a young man named Terry Norris who was #1 pound for pound back in the early 90s. Terrible Terry.
Yeah.
And I worked with him from 87 to 92. And I got a letter from the manager saying that if I wanted to continue training him, I'd have to take a 50% cut in pay. And I just wasn't willing to do that. I walked away. And he's visited me several times, and he hugs me and says I'm sorry. But a lot of times, when you're in that position, you're not really getting the true information from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes, you can save some money by not hiring him, but yes, you can also not do with the success that you've been doing with, you know. And I think that it's important to make sure the fighter knows all the pluses and minuses of every decision that is made. For my fighters, when I'm in the gym here, let's say I'm teaching something, and I'll say, "Do you understand? Let me show you. Do you understand? Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
If you see the difference, and if you don't see a difference, then let's forget about it. Let's just continue to do it the way you were doing it before." Yeah. But obviously, the reason I'm showing them because they're going to see a difference, right? So I think that young fighters like that are so consumed with what they're doing in here that they don't really see the outside part of it, the outside perspective of it. So a lot of times they get put in situations that are not necessarily their choosing, but that's just the way that the people that are outside of the ring, their advisors and their families are advising them, and it hurts them.
It's such a tough thing too, because for a fighter, like to be good at boxing, like you know, like I know, you have to. It's your whole life.
It's devotion.
You don't really have no other life but boxing, rarely, right? No social life, none of that. So they don't understand. It's not like they took a class on money management or even how to. They don't even probably know that they're being conned outside. Like they don't even know how to move around in regular life a lot of times. But you put them in the box ring, they're a genius.
Right.
But in the outside world, they're like they don't know anything.
Most of the kids are in here. They don't come from Beverly Hills.
Right. Exactly. That's the other thing.
They're coming from
limited education.
Absolutely. Yeah. And poor parents. That their parents are looking to hopefully this kid will make something, and the opportunity really, if you really look at it, how many guys out of Southern California in a year are going to make it to the point where they're supporting their family and supporting themselves? It's going to be difficult, man.
Yeah, not a high number for sure.
Shit, if it's one, I doubt it. You know,
right.
Those stars don't come along often. In 96 or 97, I remember writing a piece for Fight News. Mm-hmm. For the young man that died, what was his name? That used to do Fight News. He's the one that edited that for me. But anyway, it's called "A Disturbing Trend," and it was when Oscar had fired Robert Alcazar.
Okay.
And a lot of people were, not so much Oscar, but a lot of people around him were talking bad about Robert, that he didn't know this and he didn't know that. And I wrote this piece thinking about that and thinking about I'll send it to you on the internet. I don't think I have a copy of it. Well, I may have a copy in the office, but it was basically saying, the guy that took you from taught you how to walk and taught you how to fight, and all of a sudden TV wants to see you on TV, and he made you, and now you're talking bad about him. Why don't you just turn around and just say thank you? Thank you for all the things you did for me, instead of just bad mouthing him.
Right.
So. Unfortunately, we as young coaches, when we're young and not necessarily successful, we get those situations, and it's hardening, man. It's just hard. It makes you want to, what the heck do I want to do this for? and your wife or your loved ones say, what are you doing this for? All they're doing is talking bad about you. So, but it's for me anyway, it's always been, I love to see the smile on their faces when they win.
Yeah,
that's really. And if you look at me in the corners, I'm always away. I'm always by the commissioner. I'm never behind them. Their families behind them.
You want to see him.
I'm always to the side. I want to see him. I want to see him. I want to see him introduced. I want to see because that's a big thrill for me.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man. Yeah. That's obviously for you to be doing this so long and put so much into it, especially. Not necessarily needing it monetarily because you've done so well in your other businesses. It has to be something greater than that makes you want to do it.
It has to be a love for something. And not necessarily just boxing, but just a love for me. Again, I say is to watch this. If I coach football, just to watch the kids jumping up and down after they won the game. That would be the. And you had something to do with that.
Yeah, no,
that's very.
It's like
rewarding.
It's like a drug or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's. Speaking of kind of like the grind of like enjoying like the little things, watching a guy win is so happy. Like in the gym, like what were some of the, I guess I noticed with your fighters, for example, a lot of coaches you could see like their signature on a fighter, right? So when I watch an Abel Sanchez fighter, what comes to my mind is like I already know he's going to be really tough. I know he's going to be in great shape, and I know he's going to be like. I don't want to say aggressive. He's like really good at standing his ground, right, and being aggressive, but with good, solid, defense as well. What are some of the things in? I don't know if you could put into words like some good exercise and drills. How you cultivated that in the gym? Was it? I'm sure it's different for every fighter, but just some things that can't come to mind.
Every fighter comes with different skills,
right?
Technical skills.
Right.
I think if there's a signature for me, is presence. My fighters have presence.
Yeah.
To me, I want them in front of you. I don't want you throwing punches just to throw punches, but I want you pressing. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you make a move to me, then my posture's not gonna change. Alexis Arguello was one of my favorite fighters, and his posture would never change. It was always like this, always like this, always like this, and he would go forward, go backwards, go sideways, but his posture was always in the strongest way.
Like so imposing.
Maybe. Presence. I want to make sure that the other guy knows you're there. Mm-hmm. So when I work with a fighter, I'll put him in different positions. Okay, when I first got Golovkin was a European fighter, sitting on his back foot.
Yeah.
None of my fighters sit on their back foot.
Yeah.
My fighters adjust with their back foot, but they never sit on their back foot. When I first got Golovkin, I should say all my fighters, Sergey Kovalev.
Yeah.
Okay, I took him to 17 knockouts with a kid that really, they sent him as an afterthought when they sent him here. Why? Because we adjusted his way of approaching the fight.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm gonna do with any fighter is I'm gonna make him stand in 4 or 5 different ways, and then I'm gonna try to wrestle with them, try to maneuver them, try to find out where their strong position is. Mm-hmm. Like this, if I push you, I'm gonna push you over, right?
Right.
Some guys are like this. If I hit you here, I'm gonna push you over. So it all depends on which is their strength.
Yeah.
Where they're the strongest position. Then we start working on the rest of the stuff. How to deliver the shot from that position. How I want you to deliver the shots. A lot of Mexican fighters want to throw a little kidney punch, they call it like this. I don't like that punch. I refuse to use it with my fighters. Why? Because I think you're going to hit elbows. I think you're going to get hurt. I like to throw it. If you remember Mickey Ward, watch Mickey Ward. To me, that's a perfect body shot that he throws, and that's how I work on my body shots. Now, a lot of
like the outside like outside, around the side.
I want you to reach for all the way in the back. I want the referee to warn you that you're hitting him too far in the back. So that means what happens? That man's going to keep putting that arm back, and guess what he's going to give you?
Yeah.
He's going to give you the shot right back up the middle.
Yeah.
So you're opening them. I have a saying here, I want to open up a door to walk into. I want you to open up the door, and that's how we do it. So anyway, that's the body shot. But more than anything, I've always believed that strength is the most important part of a fighter's game.
Interesting.
Other than, of course, the technical part. Strength in.
Yeah. Do I see all your like little
strength
weights
in applying the strength. I didn't say weights strength, but just you've sparred with guys that you hit them in their and you hit them in their arms don't go anywhere, like there's
like
no
an oak tree.
Yeah. That to me is very important, but it doesn't happen in 6 weeks. It doesn't happen in 6 months. It happens in years. That machine right there on that wall is something that's very important to my fighters. HBO did a piece on that, asking me what it was called. Michael Hunter wanted to come up here and use the machine. That's what they call it. But that's very important to me because you don't realize the value of it until you do it progressively. Some of the weights that you pointed out that are in this gym, I made all myself. I welded all myself. Why? Because I think that those are beneficial to, I have a 90% knockout average in all my fighters.
Oh, wow.
So I think a knockout is very important.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
Manuel
want a
Stewart
decision.
said people want to see knockouts too.
I don't want to see a decision.
Yeah.
I don't want to take it away from me. But you're not going to knock everybody out. But I want you to go out to try to knock people out. And how you're going to do it is how we develop that knockout. Some guys have natural strength, but some guys don't. Sergey Kovalev wasn't a knockout puncher in the amateurs, yet half of his wins were by knockouts, 50%. Norris wasn't a knockout puncher, but everybody thinks he's a big puncher. But it's the way you deliver the punches and the way the effect the punches have on a fighter.
Yeah.
But all these weights that you see, we do weights on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's just consistency. Before you know it, these guys are very strong.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to have a method, and you have to have
and there's no strength and conditioning coach.
No,
like
I don't have
you do everything.
I've never had, 43 years, I never had a strength and conditioning, never had a nutritionist, never had a psychologist, never had any of that.
You do it all.
I work all my own cuts, I wrap my own hands.
Yeah. I see Ben Lear works with you now in the corner.
Well, Ben, when I first...
which is actually great.
He's my amateur coach.
It's awesome. It's awesome how you guys...
He was my amateur coach.
I know that, and I love seeing him.
So when Golovkin started to be successful, I needed somebody in the corner that I could trust.
Right.
And not only that I could trust, but he's a brilliant boxing man, right?
No, I know. Yeah. And he's been around forever.
So we get in the corner and he'll say to me something, or I'll ask him a question, or say something to him. I help, and we made a deal that I would help him with his fighters, and he would help me with mine.
I think that's beautiful how it worked full circle like that.
And we've had success. But listen, when you have somebody with the knowledge and the sage like that that he is, it's easy to understand why he's had success in his gyms.
And you were talking about like some guys are natural punchers, and obviously Golovkin. Would you say he was a natural puncher, right?
He had heavy hands.
Heavy hands.
But a lot of times, guys have heavy hands, but they don't have the timing.
Right.
They don't have they can't see the moment. They can't.
I know Murat had it. That guy was a huge puncher.
When I first got him here, he was 182 pounds. No, I'm sorry, 192 pounds. He was 19 years old, 192 pounds, had 15 fights.
Yeah.
He's a heavyweight now, and most of his fights were knockouts.
Yeah,
he wasn't a knockout puncher, but you develop that by not only the exercises that you do, but also by teaching them timing, teaching them when, teaching them, and how you do that is by combinations that let's just say you see the guys on TV throw 10 punch combinations, but yet none of them have a focus on number 3 or number 5 or number 7. So the mind just develops a beat. Okay, so now if you tell a guy, okay, number 3 and number 5 and number 7 are going to be 100% harder than number 1 and number 2. Yeah. So now you learn that in the fight too.
Yeah.
So if you do pity pat all the time, you're never going to be able to release one at the right moment.
Right.
So all those things are practiced in here, but they're practiced repetitively. I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
The weight situation there that you see, the weights that you see there, I'm not gonna say historian, but I like to watch old films of old fighters. Yeah. And I remember watching a video in a library, as a matter of fact, of some fighters using small bowling pins. not at the big ones, but a small bowling pin like this, and they were using them to do this.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So when I was in San Diego with Terry and some of those guys, I got the idea of getting a mason jar. You know what a mason jar is?
Yeah.
Right? And a piece of wood, and I put nails on the wood, and I put the wood in the center, and I poured concrete around it. And they have tall mason jars, you know, short mason jars. So then that's how I made those weights originally.
Yeah, so the weight.
So then I would break the glass.
Yeah.
And with the concept of that is that it makes you flip your wrist.
Right. Yeah, the distribution is.
But again, I can tell you what it is, but you knowing how to use it is going to be a totally different story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? So then you have to develop the process of how often you use it, what weight do you use, how do you throw it, all those things. The tool is there, but if you don't know how to use this, the saw is there, but if you don't know how to use the saw, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, what good is it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's how originally it started. And
Right.
this is my third generation of that machine right there.
Right. Yeah.
And when we're finished, I'll show you.
Yeah,
how it's done.
yeah, that would be great.
But that and this is probably what's giving me the knockouts.
Yeah.
At least I think it is anyway.
Secret sauce. Huh?
Yeah. But again, every coach has to have. But if I had all these things in a public gym, I couldn't do them in a public gym because I'd have those people saying, "Stupid guy, what the hell's he doing that shit for?"
Nah, yeah, I love having my own. Like you said, having a home is definitely key for sure. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Really interesting stuff. I wanted to ask you a little bit too about like the Golovkin Canelo fights.
Short right hand. He's gonna counter with the uppercut. Give me the left hook right here.
Because you know he's progressing, doing so good, and everybody's calling for this fight, right? And then you get the fight, the first fight, and I think the majority of the people felt Golovkin won the first fight pretty clearly, pretty convincingly.
Yeah, but when you have a score at 118 to 110.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's a little hard.
Yeah, and then okay, so that happens, right? And then you're gonna have a rematch, and then the whole thing with like just some interesting just stuff I would love to hear your perspective on is like there was a hand wrap situation, there was a Mexican meat situation, I think it was like, and hey, great commercial by the way.
Superhuman power requires a special ingredient.
We're gonna have to plug that. That's a great. What a great commercial with you eating the steak.
Yeah.
I mean, that was beautiful. I don't know.
It took like 5 hours.
Yeah, that was a great commercial.
20 seconds.
Like, what is like? So, what's going through your mind? Like, what's happening with all those situations?
Okay. First of all, Tom Loeffler, the promoter,
right,
and I just happen to think very much alike.
Yeah.
In this manner, we know we need to promote. We need to talk.
Yeah.
We need to have. I used to bring up reporters and keep them up here in Big for a weekend just so they could do a piece on Golovkin.
Got it.
When Tom and I were working directly with Golovkin, if you look at boxing, any boxing scene or fight news, there was 3 or 4 things in a 20 article sheet. There was 4 or 5 things of Golovkin.
Yeah.
Today you don't see that. The same thing with Andre. Andre Ward didn't have that. When he was in his heyday, he never had any ink.
Yeah.
You have to promote.
Yeah.
In order to sell a fight, you have to promote. The first fight, I think we won. The second fight, I think we won too, but it was a little closer. But the first fight, I think, was definitely a Golovkin fight. The second fight, the promotion part of it, the meat part of it, it was all part of just trying to build the fight.
Yeah.
Okay, look, everybody does some shit in this game, in any game, in football, in baseball. They're all doing something. That they're not getting caught, they're good at it. The guy up in San Francisco got caught a long time ago doing that stuff. So all of these fighters are doing something that's illegal. Or should I say, a lot of these fighters are doing something that's illegal.
You really think it's like what percentage are we talking?
Absolutely.
Like more than
I think that a lot of success, and I welcome somebody in my gym checking my fighters.
Yeah.
I welcome that.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of fighters don't.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches don't. There's a lot of situations where they're not allowed. Like I'm glad Vada's doing like that. They don't announce when they come in. You know, I've had Vada here. Sometimes 3 days in a row for the same fighter.
Right.
You know, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, some of them are getting away with it.
Right.
For whatever reason.
So you think that like, I mean, you just whatever, do whatever you're gonna do, and
Listen, if I have to worry about that,
yeah,
then I'm not doing my job in here.
Right.
Let the people that are supposed to worry about that, and I have to trust them.
Right.
I have to trust Vada that Vada's doing their job.
So did he? I can't remember exactly how it
He
played
supposedly
out.
ate a meat that was the cattle are.
And it was in between the two fights, right?
It was before the second fight.
He tested positive for clenbuterol, I think it was, something like that.
And it was a small percentage.
Right.
But listen, if Vada goes out there and does it again and he tests negative, then. But I have to continue to.
No, yeah, you're going to do what you're going to do.
Because it's part of the promotion.
Don't run.
And he didn't do anything.
No corras la siguiente vez.
Y
A ver si no te
te
noquean.
hablo a ti porque tu
No corras.
peleador no dice nada.
It's part of. I want him upset. If you remember the press conference over at the LA Live, he came out of his seat coming towards me. So that's part of building it up. Unfortunately, this fight hasn't had any of that.
Yeah.
There's got to be. This third
fight that's going to take place.
There's got to be
We were talking
dramatics.
about that,
There's got to be dramatics in it for things to sell. And Tom Loeffler was very instrumental in a lot of the things that happened because he's the one that set things up.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they had me on the stage and wanted me to talk about that and wanted me to say bad things about Canelo, which is how you build a fight.
Yeah.
Listen, in the weigh-in between, in the second fight, did you see me step in between them and Chepo's throwing punches at me? That's all part of it, man.
Yeah.
That's all part of the hype that you got to have. I stepped between them because listen, we worked 10 weeks in here. I don't want somebody to get a cut lip or cut eye, and they're not thinking at that moment. So, but the Chepo threw those punches at me. That was the greatest thing because why? Now the coaches are fighting. It's going to be some kind of article or something being written. So, in the second fight, the first fight he fought like I wanted him to fight it. In the second fight, there was so much written, if you remember, about him not being a boxer, him being a puncher. That's all he was. He couldn't box. And I think it got under his skin, under Gennady's skin, and he wanted to prove everybody that he could box.
So he's fighting off his back foot a little more.
And he had a beautiful jab, and every time he threw a jab, he landed it.
He does have an excellent jab.
But if I'm a judge, and you fought 23 times, and you had 23 knockouts, I want to see you going forward. As soon as you start going backwards, I think the other guy's winning. And I think that's what happened to us. I think that they saw Golovkin in a way that he was retreating with his jab and really wasn't attacking. So I think the scoring was had a lot to do with that.
Like I know too, for that fight, you were kind of uncomfortable the way that the hands were wrapped, right?
No, I can't have that. No, I cannot have that.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
That also was
A little bit of gamesmanship.
Gamesmanship, yeah.
Right.
In Mexico, in a lot of states, they allow you to put tape on the bare
Stacking,
hands.
right? Yeah, I know.
They call it stacking.
I know.
Okay, it helps and it doesn't help. But listen, if the fighter is comfortable with it, it helps. If the fighter is not used to it, then it doesn't help.
Right.
And Canelo, because how he trained over there, as long as they don't put nothing here, as long as that tape is from here back, really, what?
Yeah.
What is it gonna? If he's done it all his life, it's gonna help him. If he hasn't, if they're just doing it for that fight, that's not gonna help him because it'd be uncomfortable.
Well, in some states you can't do it, so I mean,
in California they allow you to do
Right.
some. And I've always been a proponent of this: protect your man's hands. As long as you're not doing something illegal that's gonna harm my fighter, like I said, put something beyond the knuckles. Then
what do you think? Because I don't know either, but what do you think the reasoning is? Like California won't let you stack the hand wraps, but Texas will, or Nevada will. Why do you think that those rules are different?
I think that it's got to be uniformed.
But what do you think the reasoning is though? Why do you think California thinks like stacking the hand wraps is going to give him some kind of unfair
Because there
advantage?
hasn't been no test. There hasn't been no test done by the California Commission in order to decide whether or understand if it's a benefit or not. Remember that show Mythbusters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't they do the same? You wrap your hands and stack the tape on them.
Yeah.
Okay, and have you hit something and see if it makes a difference on your power.
Just for context, stacking means you're going to have tape, gauze, as opposed to just gauze and then tape, right?
Not necessarily. No, you don't have enough gauze and tape to do that.
Okay.
Stacking means that you're going to put tape on the bare hand, then the wrap, and then tape on top of the hand. Just
Right.
just 3 times.
Got it.
Yeah, you don't have enough.
As opposed to just going gauze and then
Yeah,
tape.
that's what I do.
Same.
But you have to know you're allowed so much gauze and so much tape. You have to know how to use the gauze and tape that you're allowed.
Yeah.
So I think that they need to test it. Like I said, that show Mythbusters, if they were to have somebody wrap, the same guy, wrap your hands, stacking it, and then wrap it just without the stack, and see if it makes a difference.
So you really didn't even care how he wrapped his hands. You were just
It's illegal. No, wait a minute. I did care because it's illegal to do that in the United States. So I was just bringing it up. Oh yeah,
because I had a
in
guy,
Nevada anyway.
Oh, I had a guy
in
fight in Texas. They let him
Texas
do it.
They allowed. Yeah, Dicky Cole was allowing that there, but in Nevada and in California, it's not allowed. So whatever state you go to, you have to be in tune with what the rules are.
Right.
Right. So you have to follow the rules. That's why I say it has to be uniform throughout the United States. But unfortunately, this is the only sport. This is the only sport that doesn't have one governing body.
Right.
You know, it has 50 governing bodies.
Right.
And 4 organizations that want to govern themselves also be governing bodies.
Right.
You know, so there's nothing consistent about our sport. There's nothing, even the rounds or even the round where the fight ends, if there's a cut, that's not consistent in every state is different.
Right.
So what I was doing there is I was just pointing out that it's illegal. Here in Nevada, it's illegal. Unfortunately, the commissioner or the inspector that was there was allowing it because he was not in tune with what their rules are in the book.
Yeah.
He's interpreting his own rules. In other words, this is how I think it should be done, and it's okay.
Okay. So he let him wrap.
He actually allowed them to rap, even though I was consistently. But at that point, I wasn't going to change it. Okay.
Right.
At that point, for me, is to just make sure that they know that I'm there.
Yeah.
You know, and they know that I'm there, and they understand that I'm not going to shut up.
Here's what you need to do. You need to get away from the city, get up to Big Bear.
So I also wanted to ask you, how much do you think it matters, like training in elevation, like up in your Big Bear, like training because it's the high elevation and thinner air? Do you think that makes a big difference?
There's a percentage of guys that train at altitude, but there's a percentage of guys that don't train at altitude that are world champions.
Right.
It makes a difference only if you believe it.
Right. So do you believe that it does?
I believe that it does.
Yeah.
But if my fighter believes that it does, then it does.
Right.
But I'm going to say this to you. I've had many, many world champions come up here that train usually off the mountain. And how many rounds do you want to go? Should I go 10 every day? And they can't go 3 or 4 here.
Yeah.
They cannot go 3 or 4.
Yeah. I heard Tyson Fury actually say that.
Yeah. What happens is your throat starts to tighten up, and it takes you. The first day is hard. The second day is harder. The third day is harder. The fourth day is really hard. The fifth day is harder than that. Sixth, then it gets to 7 and 8, and it starts to. By the 10th day, it's great. When you go off the mountain, you feel like you're on Ethel.
Yeah.
I mean, you just seem to not need as much oxygen to function.
Is that the reason? Is that a big reason why you built your gym in Big Bear, because of the altitude?
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. That's the main. I shouldn't say that's the only reason. That's the main reason. The other reason was that I came up here to train. Joe Goosen and Larry Goosen used to have a gym up here in Bear City, and I came up here to train several fighters back in the early '90s, and then in mid '90s, and then in '98, I think it was '97 or '98 is when we fought Oscar with Miguel, and we came up here to train, and I saw the potential of property up here. You know, me being a building contractor, you know, I saw the potential, so I bought a bunch of vacant property that was almost given away to me, and I started building homes up here. So that plus I was able to have my gym and my business in the same town. It was perfect for me.
I think, a lot of times when it, like I said, it's for you and it's right, things kind of line up like that.
It lined up. But I believe that if the fighter believes it, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
This time, Tom Loeffler called me and asked me a favor to allow Golovkin to train here. And I did. They wanted to train here. It wasn't Tom that wanted him to. Golovkin wanted to train here. Why? Because he realizes the importance of what he was doing before.
Again, that's also very, like I said, enlightened of you to open your doors, even though the situation wasn't.
Tom Loeffler's a friend of mine.
Yeah. That's great.
But to answer your question a little better, if the fighter believes it, the coach believes it obviously because the gym's up here, but if the fighter believes it and gives himself to you and allows you to coach him and allows you to do the things you're doing here, then yeah, it's a big benefit.
Right. Well, that's, makes sense. Now, so, you're going to stay up in Big Bear now that you're done?
Well, we have a home here in Big Bear, the gym is sold.
Yeah.
I really don't want to divulge who it's sold to, but it's sold and it's going to continue as a gym. I am currently looking for a house off the mountain just to have 2 homes, one off the mountain, one up here.
Go back and forth.
I want to stay out of the snow.
Right, okay.
I'm 67 now, so it's a little harder on my body than I used to be. So if I can get something in the warm weather for the wintertime up here and then come back up here in the summertime, then I'd like that.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful up here. Yeah. For sure. I mean, fresh air, it feels like a different world coming out of Los Angeles.
As soon as you pass Running Springs, you start to see the true colors.
Right. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. So that's it. There's no possibility at all that you come to help any fighters, or? Obviously,
if the right deal came along, if the right offer came along, of course I would help a fighter, but it would be on a limited basis. I don't want to have a gym per se again, because the gym is, as you know, being a gym owner, a gym is a responsibility that takes a lot of your time. Yeah. It's a full-time job. So the reason I sold it was because having a gym doesn't allow me to say I'm not doing it no more. Because when you have a gym, there's always that somebody that says, "Hey, listen, man, loan me your gym, or let's work on this." Okay, let's do it. Especially if they're your friends. If I don't have a gym, then I can't say that. Okay?
Yeah, and I'm sure, like you said, you've done this for so many years, and kind of your family's been, they've been gypped of your time and everything. So, they deserve now to spend more time with you, and vice versa. I'm sure.
The way that I coach, the time that I put into it, it's hard on the family. It's hard on your children. Although one of my boys works with me in the corner, he loves that. But the time that you have to put in just takes away from grandchildren's birthdays and all the things, because it's a 6 day a week job.
Right.
And then when you go off on a trip, you go away for a week or a week and a half, and so Sundays you want to spend with, who do you spend it with? You spend it with your wife, you spend it with, who do you spend it with?
Right.
You can't have everybody together. So.
And I know from my own personal experience, like being able to be good at this and be good at everything else, having like a great family kind of support system is like vital.
Crucial.
Yeah.
Crucial. But it's like having 2 wives. You can't give it both 100%.
No.
It's either your family, it's either the gym. They have to understand that this is your business, this is your job. But they understand only because they have to, because they're trying to support you, not because they like it, because they don't like it.
Yeah.
They'd rather have you at home. They'd rather have you work a 8 to 5 job, and you come home and you have dinner with them, and you have the Saturday and Sunday with them, you have parties with them, all those get-togethers. Most Christmases, most of my birthdays, I've been on the road somewhere.
Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Because we are in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
So we're in the entertainment business. We go away on holidays. Why? On days that are special for family members, because we are the entertainment for those families.
Right. Yeah. Well, I get, it is time then for you to go, enjoy those things, and I'm happy for you that you're going to go do those things, and it's to say that you've had an illustrious career would be an understatement, and thank you for all you do, for the sport, and also for spending your time and talking to me, and also just having the working relationship with me over the years. I've learned a lot being around you and watching you work, and I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you doing this. And
you're welcome.
I'm sure we'll talk, keep in touch and talk soon. And
absolutely
appreciate you. Thank you very much, Mr. Abel Sanchez.
How many sit-ups do you do a day?
A lot. I don't know.
Take a guess.
Like over 500, I guess.
Okay. Gennady Golovkin, when he laid down 3 times a day, would do 15 to 2,000 3 times a day.